Scientists agree that an increase of just 0.4 more degrees will drastically change the world.
And the world are dealing with record extreme heat.
Storms have been causing deadly floods.
You could have mass melting of ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica.
If we don't act immediately, scientists say the consequences will be catastrophic.
3 degrees of warming is really disastrous.
Dealing with unprecedented heat waves and drought.
All day today, the rain falling so heavily and so quickly.
$10 billion. But recovery funds are tight.
Rescuers doing everything they can to reach survivors.
What is COP27? It stands for Conference of the Parties. Since 1995, world leaders and their delegates have convened annually to discuss the critical issue of global warming, carbon emissions, and how to tackle climate change. This year's meeting marks the 27th gathering of the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or COP27 for short. The international forum also attracts environmental groups, scientists, business leaders, celebrities and journalists, and protesters demanding that governments speed up and act on their pledges. Where was COP27 held? The conference took place in the Egyptian coastal resort city of Sharm El Sheikh from November 6th to November 18th. Since Berlin hosted the first summit almost 3 decades ago, the location has rotated among 5 UN regional groupings: Africa, Asia, Latin America and the Caribbean, Central and Eastern Europe and Western Europe and others. This year's location has prompted calls for the conference to focus on African countries, which are some of the most vulnerable to climate change despite being among the lowest emitters, but it has also invited criticism of Egypt's human rights record. Why COP is important. The high-profile summit is an opportunity to get world leaders in the same space to discuss protecting the planet. Themes include biodiversity, water, gender, and transport. Climate change has risen up political agendas as floods, drought, wildfires, and extremes weather hurt millions of people, homes, and economies across the globe. Under a 2015 Paris Accord, countries agreed to keep global warming well below 2 degrees Celsius, 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit compared with pre-industrial levels, and more ambitiously if possible, to stop at 1.5 Celsius to 0.7 Fahrenheit. But a UN report last month warned the world could be on track for a 2.5 degree Celsius 4.5 degree Fahrenheit rise in global temperatures by the end of the century. The UN has cast COP27 as a critical platform to catch up as the work ahead is immense. Highlights of COP27. Developed nations agreed early Sunday to help developing countries pay for the catastrophic consequences of climate change, a historic agreement reached after weeks of fraught negotiations that went into overtime at this year's UN Climate Conference in Egypt. The conference hall of weary diplomats broke out in muted applause after COP27 President Sameh Shoukry sealed the deal with a strike of his gavel. Still, the crucial questions of which countries must provide financing for the fund and which will be eligible to benefit from it have been left to future negotiations. Here's what to know. Negotiators reached a deal on a loss and damage fund that represented a significant shift for U.S. leaders who have long feared such payments could make the nation liable for huge sums given its historical contribution to emissions. The European Union's Frans Timmermans expressed disappointment with the conference outcome, saying the world will not thank us when there are only excuses for why nations did not agree to move more boldly to slow global warming. Shoukry said the deal before delegates represents the highest ambition that can be reached at this time. He urged attendees to consider the agreement a gateway to more substantive actions that must take place over time. For many countries, the last hours of the negotiation represent a real step backwards in the fight against rising temperatures. While the loss and damage text represented a big win, the overall cover decision is being seen as a missed opportunity in the fight against climate change.